Hi everyone, I'm Bakhtawar and I make bookish content. I talk about books. Today I'm doing a short review on Mexican Gothic by Silvia Moreno Garcia, which I read recently if you follow me on Instagram and such. A lot of books that I read, I don't actually end up making videos on, so make sure that you're following me on Instagram so that you can sort of, if you want to know what I'm reading at any point in time. So Mexican Gothic, I must admit, I was completely taken in by the marketing. I mean, I think that the author knew that if you name it this, a lot of people, enthusiasts of the Gothic genre, are going to pick it up, which was definitely my case. I'm very susceptible sometimes to marketing. The story starts off with the protagonist, Naomi. I think it's Naomi or Naomi. I'm not sure. So, anyway, she receives a letter from her recently married cousin, Catalina, who is claiming that her husband is trying to kill her. A bit premature, if you ask me. But anyway, so it's this really disturbing letter. And Catalina is a bit of an heiress because she inherited a lot of money after her father died. And this guy that she's married is this kind of, he belongs to this old aristocratic family, but they've really run into hard times. So there's this idea that he's married her only for the money. So Naomi goes to this really abandoned podunk town in the middle of nowhere, and it literally reeks of death and decay, and there's like massive graveyards all over the place because there's this sort of whispers going around that there was this really unexplained, horrific, widespread illness that killed a bunch of hundreds of mine workers, or they were killed in mysterious circumstances. It's just like the whole place seems to be obsessed with death almost. She gets to the place where her cousin lives with her in-laws, and it's this old Victorian mansion. And there's a lot of emphasis in the book about everything being Victorian. From the teacups to the knives to the silverware, the windows, everything is Victorian. There's gargoyles. I mean, it's like a very purposeful Gothic setting. It's like she wants you to know everything is Victorian. Anyway, so the house, apart from being outwardly old fashioned and creepy, is also sort of alive in a way. It kind of has a mind of its own, and once you start living in it, it kind of toys with your mind as well. So Naomi ends up. I'm just going to call her Naomi because I'm not sure what her pronunciation is. So Naomi, she ends up quite trapped in the house. She can't leave, and Catalina seems to have lost her mind entirely, which is not surprising because her in-laws are completely criminally insane, and the house is horrifying. So despite everything continually going wrong for Naomi, one thing after another, there was a great deal of comfort to be had. When I was reading this book, I remember I was reading it with a cup of tea. It's because so many of the tropes and the themes and the elements that are used, they're so familiar, right? It's like a contemporary reworking of really very classic Gothic tropes. So you have the unexplained fog and the ghosts and the sudden storms. You have the creepy architecture. So you have this almost Edgar Allan Poe type of feel to it, except much, much less sophisticated than Poe, obviously. And also, I felt like it was strangely reminiscent of Nora Roberts novels. I had this phase in my teenage in which I read a lot of Nora Roberts. And Nora Roberts is like, it's not the best quality fiction. It's kind of like very basic romance type novels which have a touch of the supernatural in them. So it's not like the best stuff from a literary perspective that's out there. But because I'd read so many of them when I was younger, it was like I instantly kind of felt like this sort of style was very familiar. But there's quite a bit of sense in the novel. It talks about a lot of things which we nowadays are really discussing a great deal on social media. Everything from feminism to, what is the worth of a woman? Is she, only to be married for her looks or for her money? Kind of those sort of debates, as well as, I think one of the morals of the story is also that, don't mess with a woman who knows what she's worth, sort of thing, which very much is Naomi in a nutshell. And also, the novel very much talks about this sort of depiction of how probably not this generation, but kind of the older generation, is very much had this idea of because the character, the patriarch in the novel, who's kind of like the father-in-law of Catalina, he's kind of this really sick weirdo, and he has this idea that there are inferior races and superior races, and he's very evil. I mean, I don't want to ruin it for anybody, but no spoilers. But so there's this huge conversation around, he kind of, you see him mocking Naomi on her color. You see him talking about inferior and superior races, and how to maintain the purity of the bloodline, or whatever. So all of that sort of really cringy stuff. And of course, I think that in my sort of generation, we're lucky because of social media. We know that it's very, very wrong to even think about things like this, and it's completely inaccurate. But when you think about people of the older generation, when you read history at any point in time, whether you look at the history of colonization, whether you look at the history of any particular race, events of the World War, the Second World War. I mean, if you read history at any point in time, you will find that the fact that all men are equal has not really been the prevalent view. It's very much been the opposite. And, the family that lives in the mansion, they're called the Doyles. They have English blood, so they think that it's superior, and they're obsessed with kind of holding on to it and kind of holding on to a vestige of their previous power and everything, even though they've lost most of their money. But it's worse than that, because in the novel they've kind of achieved a very disturbing kind of symbiosis with nature. They've kind of really toyed with the processes of nature to sort of retain what they assume is their power, really. I do want to say that I would have preferred, I mean, there's a lot of very good plot points in the book, but I would have preferred had they sort of popped up earlier, because a lot of the really great plot points come in the last quarter of the book, which I did not fully appreciate. I mean, of course, I had stuck with the book, so I really liked it, but I would have preferred had they had they come earlier in the novel. So generally, it evokes a lot of what is familiar. It's a very comfortable read. Sometimes I need a read like that in between my more, if you may call it, intellectual pursuits or more complicated novels. So I prefer a novel which does most of the work for you. You don't have to think a lot. So I need a book every now and then that's kind of like a break from more complicated works of fiction. So for that reason, I kind of liked it. Of course, it has a couple of flaws. Most contemporary novels do. But if you're a fan of the genre, I think you'll have a good time. That's all for today, folks. Take care of yourselves, and please let me know in the comments down below what you're reading. I love knowing what other people are reading at any point in time. Please share that in the comments, and I'll see you next time. Bye.